All right, Mr. D, let's talk a little bit about grapes.
Talk about grapes.
All right.
Okay. I guess first thing let's talk about is the similarities that pretty much all grapes have in common.
Okay.
They need a fairly high pH, up around 6 pH, 6 to 7 pH is good for all grapes. And the grapes we're talking about are the bunch type and the muscadine types. And there's several bunch types out there, the American hybrids, the French hybrids, and those kind. But they all, when you're planting them, the best time to plant them is in the late winter, early spring.
Okay.
Don't plant them too early. You don't want to put them out there before you have several real hard freezes. Here in the Memphis area, I'd say March, late March, mid to late March is a good time to plant in the mid-south area here. That is also the best time to prune them. You can go a little bit later on the pruning. When you prune them, if they're bleeding, a lot of people get concerned when they're bleeding, but that's not a problem. Just the juice running out of the plant is not a problem. It's better to prune them when they bleed a little bit than to prune them, too early or in the fall. You do not want to prune them in the fall. You don't want to plant or prune within 48 hours of a hard freeze. If a hard freeze is forecast within the next 48 hours, wait until after that freeze occurs.
Okay.
And then get on out there and plant and prune.
So what's the difference between grapes and muscadines, though?
A muscadine is a type of grape.
Okay.
A muscadine is a grape, but the muscadine is a type of grape.
Okay.
And the muscadine types are types that do well in the summertime. They're more native to a lot of the country because, muscadines are native to here in the Memphis area. There were wild muscadines growing on Mud Island. Of course, there's also a lot of non-native plants growing around also. But in the South, the muscadine types tend to do better, in my opinion. And there are several different muscadine types out there. Let me go over some of the varieties there.
Okay. All right.
And these are varieties that have been around for a long time.
Okay.
I was recommending these back when I worked in Mobile County back in the 80s and 90s. But Hunt, Scuppernong, Carlos, Pride, Nesbitt, Golden Isle, Triumph, Magnolia, Cowart. Those are all muscadine varieties that have been around a long time. I mentioned Scuppernong.
Yeah.
Some folks think that all muscadine, they call all muscadines Scuppernongs. Well, Scuppernong is just one variety of muscadine. It's a female bronze variety. Muscadines come in either black, they're either dark colored or bronze.
Okay.
Now there are two types of muscadines. The female types require cross-pollination. They require a perfect flowered type to pollinate them. The perfect flowered type, on the other hand, is completely self-fruitful. So of the ones I mentioned, 1, 2, 3 of them are females, and the rest of them are perfect flowered types. But let me go back and I'll talk a little bit about some of the other types of grapes, bunch types. They're used for wine, or they're used table grapes, for eating. Some do better for jellies and juices and things like that.
Are they considered the bunch grapes? Are they perfect flowered, female flowered, or most of them self-fruitful?
They're all self-fruitful.
They're all self-fruitful.
So that would mean they have.
You don't have to worry about getting.
Right.
You don't have to worry about pollination.
You can have one vine.
That's right. You can have one vine.
set
And
That's
you can
good.
That's true.
Yeah.
Very good point.
Small yards,
Right. and that is something
homeowners,
that's
they want to try it,
Uh-huh.
right?
and that is something that's important to consider, because if you grow muscadines, it's recommended that you plant them 20 feet apart.
Wow.
Yeah, they take a lot of space.
That because they'll have a 10-foot runner, and you'll have to
back.
prune it to
Right.
10 feet because it's going to want to go 20 feet, and so you'll have within the row 20 feet apart on muscadines, and then you want your rows 12 to 15 feet apart. So it takes a lot of space if you're growing muscadines.
Yeah.
Not real good in a small, backyard, a small backyard. The bunch type grapes don't require quite as much space. You can put them, 8 to 10 feet within the row, and because they're not quite as aggressive as the Muscadine types, you still probably need to leave, 10, 12 feet between the rows. But another thing that they have in common is they all fruit on current season's growth that came out of 1-year-old wood.
Okay.
And so it's important to prune them. Don't wait 3 or 4 years, especially if you have the Muscadine types that are very, very, they grow a lot. They grow fast. It's important to prune them annually. And you can take off most of last year's growth. You can prune them back to 2 or 3 buds. Just follow that long runner all the way back and have 2 or 3 nodes or 2 or 3 buds and cut it off. And so you'll leave a little stub there. And so that's your 1-year-old wood. And the growth that comes out of those buds will be the current season's growth that you'll fruit on. Now, if you go all the way back to the main stem, then the new growth that comes out is going to be coming out of what? Older wood,
right.
2 or 3-year-old wood.
Yeah.
Will it fruit? No. You will have a beautiful vine. It'll be big and it'll be green and it'll do real well. So it's important to leave a little bit of last year's growth when you prune them back. There are a lot of different trellis systems that you can use for grapes. You can have one of the simplest is a single wire, which is a post with a single wire going across the top. You can have a double wire system, which has a single wire going across a post that's like 5 feet tall, and then about a couple of feet lower, another wire under there, and you have a double wire system. There's a Geneva double curtain, which kind of looks like my mother's clothesline. It's really got 3 wires. It's got wires going out on the end of the Geneva double curtain system, and then one going along the top of the post to kind of. But that's the Geneva double curtain, and it's probably the most popular. It exposes more of that plant to sunlight than any other type.
Than just doing the straight up couple of wires.
Right. You can plant your plants and put in the trellis system after you plant them if you want to, or you can go ahead and put your trellis system in first, and then. But you're going to have a trellis system.
Got to have a trellis system. Are there any major diseases of grapes that we need to know about?
There are. Probably the number one disease that if you grow grapes, you need to go to your local extension office and get the home orchard spray guide, and we'll have a section on diseases. And black rot is by far the most common fungal disease. It shows up as a coppery spot on the leaf, and it causes the grapes to turn black and shrivel up, and they're not any good. And that's probably the most common problem. It affects both bunch type and muscadine types, but probably more so on the bunch types than on the muscadine type. The bunch type, some of them are susceptible to a disease called Pierce's disease, which spends part of its life cycle on a grape and part of it on a peach tree. It's thorny peach on peach trees. It's rickettsia type organism spread by leafhoppers, and once they get it, you just got to take them out.
Wow.
The plants do not survive either phony peach on a peach tree or the Pierce's disease in grapes. Muscadines do not get that. But several of the newer varieties of the bunch types are resistant to Pierce's disease. They have resistance to that. But powdery mildew is another problem, and your fungicide that you go by if you put your grapes on a spray schedule should take care of those kind of things. Insects.
Yeah, that's going to be the next question.
Insects not normally much of a problem on grapes. I'm sure a stink bug if he goes.
Sure.
But
Also Japanese beetles.
Japanese beetles, things like that.
They eat everything.
That can be a problem.
Yeah.
That's right.
But again, nothing preventative that you would need to do on grapes. If you have a problem, you can go out there and try to deal with it. Scout. Keep an eye on them.
What about any critters running around there?
Not aware. Not like strawberries that have critters that get out there and work on them, and deer that walk across them and mess up the plastic and eat them, and all that. And I'm sure deer,
Probably.
if you have a very high population, would work on you a little bit, but just not a lot of problems
Okay.
with grapes with insects and critters and things like that.
Oh, we appreciate that, Mr. D. Good stuff. Appreciate that. Thanks for watching the video. I hope you enjoyed it. To find out more information on this topic, just click on the familyplotgarden.com link in the description.